It's also an important day to remember that the Civil War, like all wars, was a rich man's war and a poor man's fight. Most of those killed or wounded were of the poorer classes.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
September 2022. Let's do a little bit of labor history, some important anniversaries in labor history. As you can see, I'm rocking my United Farm Workers shirt today, which will come up here in a sec. I do want to give a shout out again to Planning to Change the World, a plan book for social justice educators, the 2022-23 edition. That gave me some inspiration and a lot of the material for this segment. And it's something we're going to incorporate moving forward, I believe. Make sure we did this last month. Want to make sure we're incorporating some labor history into our program. So shout out to Planning to Change the World. That's from Education for Liberation Network. And Labor Notes and Zen Education Project were also very helpful sources as I compiled this. So let's get started with September 1st. That was the 100th anniversary of the Daughtry Injunction. Railroad workers revolted against a 12% wage cut. Nearly 400,000 workers walked off the job in July 1922. Pennsylvania Railroad President Samuel Ray hired more than 16,000 armed men to break the strike of nearly 20,000 employees at the company's shops in Altoona, Pennsylvania. On September 1st, Attorney General Harry Daughtry got a federal judge to issue a sweeping injunction forbidding all activities encouraging the strike, violating the workers' First Amendment right to free speech. This was not the first, nor would it be the last time striking workers would see their First Amendment rights under attack. And so that one seems, it's interesting. We start off with the railroad story since we have been discussing the railroads the last couple of weeks. And of course, we've covered the ways in which Warrior Met Coal has sought support from the courts to try to limit the pickets and protests down in Brookwood, Alabama. And moving on, September 5th was Labor Day. While listeners to this show probably know the real Labor Day is actually May 1st, International Workers' Day, I reckon we'll take the day. Labor Day honors the social and economic achievements of American workers and pays tribute to the contributions workers have made to the strength, prosperity, and well-being of the country. And according to Newsmax, if you took off Labor Day, you are a communist sympathizer. So just make that little note. September 8th was International Literacy Day, which is meant to give children and communities a chance to rediscover the joys of reading while raising awareness about those without access to formal education. This being a labor radio program, I think we can all agree on the critical need for literacy among our fellow workers. September 10th was the 125th anniversary of the Latimer Massacre. A strike began weeks prior as miners from eastern Pennsylvania protested extremely dangerous working conditions, unpaid overtime, and the company's store. About 400 miners, mostly immigrants, began an unarmed, peaceful march to Latimer to support the newly formed United Mine Workers there. When they arrived, Luzerne County Sheriff James Martin and his deputies opened fire on the men and boys. 19 mine workers were killed and dozens were wounded in the Latimer Massacre. I recommend you check out Zen Education Project for some more details there. That was not one I had heard of previously. September 12th was the 50th anniversary of Ames' occupation of the Oklahoma Department of Education. Approximately 50 Native Americans with the American Indian Movement took over the office of State Education Director Overton James, demanding his resignation for misappropriation of federal funds intended for education programs for Native American children. The occupation continued until a settlement was reached with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which agreed to an audit of Education Department expenditures, as well as allowing more Native input into programs affecting their children. Another example of direct action getting the goods. September 15th was the first official day of Hispanic Heritage Month, starting on the anniversary of independence for 5 Latin American countries: Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. September 17th was the 160th anniversary of the Battle of Antietam, also called the Battle of Sharpsburg down here in the South. This battle is often referred to as the bloodiest single day in U.S. history. 23,000 men were killed or wounded in just a single day of fighting. It's also an important day to remember that the Civil War, like all wars, was a rich man's war and a poor man's fight. Most of those killed or wounded were of the poorer classes. While the Union did suffer greater casualties than the Confederacy, the battle was a turning point for the North, and the Union victory at Antietam led to the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. And of course, many historians see the Civil War and Reconstruction as effectively a second American Revolution. September 18th was the 10th anniversary of the conclusion of the successful Chicago Teachers Union strike. Under the slogan, "Fighting for the Schools Chicago Students Deserve," they rallied the public to their side and beat back the powerful mayor, Rahm Emanuel. The eight-day strike by 27,000 Chicago teachers showed the importance of educators using their collective power to demand that all children get the education they deserve. The CTU's 2012 strike didn't just put the Union on the map. It gave the whole labor movement a jolt of hope. It served as a model for how future organizers might build alliances among educators, parents, and community organizations in resisting the pro-corporate, pro-privatization agenda. Just a few years earlier, this was an ordinary union with run-of-the-mill problems: uninspiring leaders, inactive members, too few stewards, and a general sense of passivity and hopelessness. A few rank-and-file activists got together and changed all that. The strike continues to be a touchstone for educators and labor organizers today, and their story remains a model for anyone looking to transform a do-nothing union into a fighting force. On a personal note, the 2012 CTU strike was taking place as I was getting into teaching here in North Alabama. And I remember wanting to drive up to Chicago to march with them, but being too broke at the time to make that happen. But it really inspired me to focus my energies on the intersection of public education and the labor movement, and led to me getting involved in my local. And there are story after story after story of other union activists who were similarly inspired by the 2012 Chicago Teachers Union strike. September 21st, was the International Day of Peace. Initiated in 1981, the UN International Day of Peace is an annual commemoration aimed at encouraging all people to play a part in building a peace culture worldwide. Communities across the globe organize their own observances designed to bring people together for world peace. My own observation would be fight the boss, not their wars. September 30th was the 60th anniversary of the founding of the National Farm Workers Association. Activists led by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta founded the National Farm Workers Association, now known as the United Farm Workers, in order to support and defend the rights of farm workers to decent working conditions and wages. The NFWA largely acted for change through boycotts, marches, and fasts, and is also known for mobilizing the Chicano movement in the U.S. And I want to just mention that the United Farm Workers are fighting in California right now to get legislation signed by Governor Newsom to make it easier to have union elections for the farm workers who, if listeners may know, are excluded from some of the normal provisions of American labor law, much like domestic workers. And that's it for September labor history.
Yeah, amazingly, he has not signed that, even after Biden wrote a letter to him urging him to sign it. And he still hasn't signed it. And
Grissom Gavin, come on, brother.
And a report recently came out saying that he's considering a run for the presidency. And I don't know how he's going to do that if Biden would be able to outflank him from his left on labor.
Right. Yeah. I understand that Big Ag is heavily influential in California, much as they are here in Alabama. Mm-hmm. But do the right thing, Governor Newsom. Sign the bill. These workers deserve to have a fair opportunity for free and fair union elections. Frankly, they deserve their union and shouldn't even have to go through the ordeal. But as Mr. Jameson just talked to us about with the union busting law firms. Unfortunately, most capitalists do not take the approach of recognizing a union voluntarily.
Yep.
Even in instances where it would actually save them more money and heartache and hassle to do so.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.